So this is not a history class, but I think it is important to appreciate where lean thinking came from. Toyota didn't pluck it out of thin air. It's taken many decades, in fact, centuries of development, as this chart depicts. Now, I'm not going to go as far back as the ancient Egyptians, and you're probably relieved about that. But what I am going to do is pick it up at the transition point from craft manufacturing and the start of the Industrial Revolution and the movement towards mass production. And starting with Adam Smith, who really created this idea of the division of labour, where instead of one person manufacturing a part from beginning to end, division of labour breaks up the task into multiple stages and then finds the people and the skills and sometimes the machine to do that particular stage with greater efficiency and avoid all the changeover times that are involved when you're doing it all yourself. And then, in the example that is well documented, the story of a pin manufacturer, where barely, if it's one person making a pin from end to end, you'd barely make one a day. When he broke it down into 18 stages with different people involved, a team of 10 people could manufacture almost 50,000 pins a day. And this was a revolution enabling production to take place much faster, much more efficiently, and you could start to control, quality as well, which enabled this transition to much higher volumes of manufacturing. Then on top of that, Eli Whitney and the interchangeability of parts or standard parts, and famously in the manufacture of guns, where previously you're making parts that are bespoke for that particular gun, whereas if you're making to tolerances and the parts are interchangeable, you're now able also to make parts and finished product much quicker. But then importantly, if there's an issue with a particular part, you can swap it out. You can repair the part and not have to throw away the whole product. So that then, paved the way for greater levels of efficiency and scale. On top of that, then, but you need a management system, and so the train wreck management concept appeared after a fatal accident on the Western Railroad in the US. Where in the post-mortem, if you like, what emerged was this idea of management, the term manager, with roles and responsibility, lines of and chains of command, lines of reporting, communication. That was new, and Frederick Taylor built on that with his ideas of scientific management. So now we've got more of a management system. We've got documented and timed procedures. We've got training and development and more scientific selection of people appropriate to the task. And so by the time Henry Ford came along, he was able to put all these things together in the manufacture, famously, of the Model T, using standard parts, standard work, but on top of that he built in the idea of flow, the idea of a moving assembly line, bringing the work to the operator, who were then also divided into specific tasks. Now all of this was based on a heavy command and control structure, on the sort of hierarchies of the day. And people were treated a little bit as a commodity. And I'm going to come back to that a little later because, of course, we now know in the modern workplace, it has to be all about people as your greatest asset. Now, so building on that, in the 1920s, Walter Shewhart in the Bell Laboratories developed the idea of statistical process control and control charts, and this was a radical new development, helping us understand variation, and variation being divided into two types: that of natural variation or common cause variation due to multiple inherent factors, but on top of that, assignable special cause variation factors that are attributable to a change, a shift, which is still 100 years on, is still not as widely understood as it could be, and not as well used as it could do for helping managers take better, more accurate decisions. Then in the period of the Second World War, training within industry emerged as a way of learning by doing, using standard work, and enabling a more rapid development of skills and capability with scale to achieve the production demands of the time. And much of lean thinking is still based on those concepts of training within industry for developing people's capability. Now, since the Second World War, we start to see a shift, an important shift towards a more people-centric approach. Maslow, with his hierarchy of needs, which gave us an understanding around, we all have personal expectations and personal needs, which start off with our hygiene factors being taken care of, health and safety, terms and conditions, a sense of security and safety. So those are essential before we can begin to become motivated and empowered, and indeed this idea of self-actualization, where we fulfill our potential. So those concepts are still extremely relevant with the modern workforce. And then comes along a giant of the 20th century, W. Edwards Deming, really the father of modern quality management, building on the idea of scientific thinking, scientific management, with the plan, do, check, act cycle, which you'll be hearing more about later in this program, and really revolutionizing management thinking. And one of the pioneering thoughts was about not blaming people who previously, when things had gone wrong, when there were defects or accidents or problems with production, invariably it was the operator, it was people getting blamed, and there were consequences for the operator, often involving being termination of contracts. Well, Deming turned that on his head and said, actually, the vast majority of time, people are not to blame. The blame lies in the process, in the system, and therefore it's the responsibility of management to fix the process and to improve the system, to make it less likely that defects can occur, because most people are trying to do the right thing. So with all of that, up emerges Toyota after the Second World War in a country, Japan, that had been devastated. It was financially and industrial on its knees, and here was a weaving company, Toyota, who made a name in manufacturing looms, suddenly taking on the world car market, and doing it with new thinking, not applying all of the Ford and General Motors concepts, certainly the idea of standard work and flow, for example, but using smaller machines, empowering and developing the workforce to solve problems, creating cross-functional teams, reducing setup times, building quality into the process, not just measuring productivity and output, but measuring service levels, quality, safety, and really bringing in this idea of continuous improvement. Taiichi Ohno, chief engineer of Toyota, was a leading figure in this, as was Shigeo Shingo, who brought in the idea of the 7 wastes. He was the first to codify the 7 wastes, which you'll be hearing about in this program. Also, Shingo brought in the idea of SMED, rapid exchange of dies, quick changeovers to enable smaller batches, more flexible production, because now we're starting to move. We've gone from craft production into the Industrial Revolution, into mass production, and now we're starting to see mass customization. The customers of the modern era requiring variety, a personalized expectation, different colors, different variants, different options. And Toyota could see that. And so they designed their products and their production systems to enable flexible meeting of those new demands. In the 80s, we saw the development, the emergence of Six Sigma. Motorola were the first to pioneer this, first winners of the Baldrige Award in the US. Six Sigma deepened our understanding of variation and controlling processes to eliminate defects, and also introduced the idea of DMAIC, define, measure, analyze, improve and control, a 5-step methodology for process improvement. So at this point, the word lean hadn't been documented, wasn't a thing. And it was only when Womack and Jones published their work in the 1990s, in a couple of books, The Machine That Changed the World and Lean Thinking, that lean entered the language of continuous improvement. Toyota don't use the word lean. It's just the way they think. It's the way they work. It's embedded in the Toyota production system. But for most of the Western world, this was revolutionary thinking and concepts and methods, and there was a growing hunger to find out what was fueling Toyota's growth and Toyota's success, and other largely Japanese companies at the time. Building on that further is the work of Stephen Covey. And you might have read the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which really are for leaders and managers and individuals to discover what are the ingredients for sustainable success and for people and organizations to fulfill their potential. And a lot of this is about treating people with respect. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. Also concepts like begin with the end in mind, having a vision, having a clear aspiration for you personally, for the organization as a whole, that sets your course, sets your priorities. And from there you can plan and organize your time accordingly. So the Covey thinking actually helped shape the Shingo Prize, if you like, the Nobel Prize for manufacturing. The Shingo Prize recognizes organizations that have achieved sustainable excellence, not just in terms of the results, but in terms of the culture, where everyone, everywhere, every day is contributing continuous improvement, and the systems are enabling that to happen. And that's bringing together all of the best practices and principles that I've been describing to achieve the highest levels of operational excellence and high performance. And companies in Ireland and the UK have been recognised with achieving those levels of performance. Of course, today we're now in the new age of digital manufacturing, automation, Industry 4.0, and the need for greater agility, which is so this journey never ends. We're just at a particular point in time, but the principles of lean and continuous improvement that you'll be learning in this program are universal. They're timeless, and will stand you and your businesses in good stead for many years to come.